The Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Special Board Meeting is now in session. If you would stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. West, if we could have the roll call, please.
Sure. Mr. Mickelson?
Here.
Mrs. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Jackman?
Here.
Mr. Batolo?
Here.
Mr. Reedy?
Here.
Mr. Hay? Chairman Jellicoe?
Here. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Batolo. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes. There's also an addendum containing personnel items. Is there a motion to approve the addendum?
So moved, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Second by Mr. Mickelson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion, and opposed, nay. Motion passes. We'll now enter into a public hearing to amend the 2019-2020 budget. Is there a motion? Motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Second.
and seconded by Mr. Jackman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We are now in the public hearing portion of the meeting. Mr. Duncan.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Board of Trustees, Superintendent McGovern. There are 3 items for budget moves under consideration tonight. The first one revolves around the retention incentive. The second one is a reclassification to purchase curriculum materials so we can have them in place at the beginning of the school, and also to repay some unallowable costs out of the Perkins grant. And then the third item is the return of funds out of the Perkins grant. So for the first one, the retention incentive, that this reallocates the money that was set aside at the beginning of the year in the budget, that $1,650,000. So we put it into the line items where we thought they were going to be. So now we're moving those into the line items where they'll be charged out. So again, this is the money that was set aside for staff compensation at the beginning of the year in the budget. We also used a little bit of the remaining sick leave payout to balance as well, because we went, the budget dollars went just a little bit over that 1.665, not a whole lot, but a little bit. And throughout the course of the year, we did have to dip into our 2999 accounts for some sped contracts. So what we needed to do is we went out and grabbed some lane changes, some contingency salary amounts, and also some unused funds for the OCI director to balance that out to bring us up to that 1.65.
Okay, anything else?
Okay, any questions
Any
on
questions from the
the first one?
trustees? Okay, please proceed.
Okay. The second item is also in the general fund, and this is a reclassification for curriculum and to cover some unallowable costs out of the Perkins grant. How it breaks down is most of the money was moved out of professional development that became available when the COVID started to rear its head. And so a lot of the travel was canceled. So that freed up some budget money. How it breaks down is the curriculum is about $57,864. And this will allow us to buy some curriculum materials for books that we already have for the curriculum materials we already have to supplement those. So they'll be in place at the beginning of the school year. And the Perkins unallowable cost between the last year grant and the current year grant is $60,850. Any questions on the second item?
Any questions, trustees? Okay,
Okay.
please proceed.
Last item is to return the funds to the Wyoming Department of Education for those costs that were unallowable out of the Perkins grant. And that would be last year's Perkins grant, so the 2018-2019 grant. And we do have an estimate that 56,835.79. That's the number that we were working with. We have since found out that that number will be closer to 55,000. So you might see another little adjustment in June to bring us down to the actual amount that was unallowable out of that grant.
Questions, trustees? Okay, so do we have a figure yet as to what the per year allowance will be regarding the retention incentive?
We do, yes. And I can cover that in 3A if that's okay.
Okay, we'll just wait on that then,
Mhm.
okay? All right. Any other questions, trustees? And I have no comments with regard to communications and correspondence with regard to this. So I will entertain a motion to return to the special board meeting.
Wait, hold on, I think we need to cover 3A under
3A.
the
Oh,
public
okay,
hearing.
that's
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Okay, so the update on the retention incentive, as a refresher, is for full or part-time employees that will be employed as of August 17th, so at the beginning of the next school year. They also had to sign a letter of assurance that they were going to come back to work for us. That letter needed to be submitted by May 15th at 4 o'clock, and they would have had to have their first day of employment before April 1st. And so that's passed us. So we have the list of people that are eligible now.
And that's classified as well as certified?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. The payout will be June 5th, so that will be next week. And it's based on the gross amount of $1,000 per person plus $110 per year for service. Last year it was $1,040, and so it's $110 this year. Also, we're asking that if an employee receives a retention and is not full-time or part-time as of August 17th, so if they don't come back for us, that we're asking them to repay that money. So that's true for everybody. And also for the long-term subs that are filling full-time positions in the classroom, that to be eligible for a $500 gross amount for the retention, they would have had to been full-time at September 1 and have worked through the end of this school year. So basically last school year, they would have to fulfill that.
And those letters of assurance have already been collected, so that's all that paperwork is behind us.
That's correct. And, kudos to Stephanie that she put that online. So it was online. There were no paper submissions. They were all online submissions. And I'd also like to answer a question that came about during negotiations about whether a person can make contributions to their retirement account out of the retention bonus.
Mhm.
Okay. So the answer to that is yes, that would be allowed by the IRS. However, our accounting system limits our ability to do so. And the reason why is that when you flip the switch to pull that deduction from one person, it pulls them from everybody that has that same deduction, whether they wanted to or not. So it's just impractical to do on a one-time payment like this. And my suggestion would be if they wanted to, they could still adjust their contributions going forward throughout the remainder of the year. So if they wanted to contribute and use that money, they could just change what was taken out for the remaining
They
checks.
could do it over the remainder of over their next year.
Yes, the next
Okay.
calendar year.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We also knew, is there anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, we had talked about looking at the financial situation regarding restoring the third step. Would you like to update us on that?
It's in the budget, that and a step is in the preliminary budget, and that's
For
one
next year.
for next year. That is correct.
So based on the funding we have this year, it just cuts us too close to do that this year. Am I accurate?
Yes, it's very risky under the current scenario with the legislature to take it out of that line item. Now, if we're still working through our budget and we're still trying to find additional positions that we could scale back, and so we're keeping that in the back of our mind when we work through those, and so
Okay.
we're trying to find money over and above what we already have set aside, and if we can do that, then it might be an option then to grant that last.
Okay,
Chosen
so
step.
that's still iffy. Okay, all right. And anything about the CARES grant that you would like to?
There's not a whole lot of information out there, and
that's
we've
where,
been clamoring.
that's what
for
I'm
it.
coming from. We just don't have a lot of information
That-
on that yet. So
that
just
is-
clarification on that.
Sure. To the best of my knowledge, there are 3 pockets of money, really. There's one for the governor, the gear money. There's one from the feds, and it's ESSER. Is it ESSER money? CARES money. And then there's an additional pot that came to our attention within just the last few days, that the governor has another set aside amount that may be available to school districts as well. We don't know when that money will be released so we can budget it. We have a few guidelines of how it can be used, but it basically has to be related to the COVID.
Okay.
But other than that, there's not a lot of information out there
Okay.
at this time.
Well, just clarification since we're in the budget part of it. So, okay. Trustees, any other questions?
I don't have a question. I have more of a comment. I know that I myself would like to see that third step restored, but I think with everything that's going on right now, we have to be even more careful with looking forward with our finances, because we just honestly don't know what's going to happen. And if anything's taught us that, the legislature is extremely unpredictable. But I know Scott will always let us know if that is something that is a possibility. But I know the employees would love it and we'd love to give it, but we still have to be fiscally responsible and make sure that we are covering our costs, because the last thing we would want to do is go ahead and give that final step and then turn around and have to freeze salaries again, excuse me. So I just think we need to be aware of, no matter how much we'd love to redo that, we need to really pay attention to where we're at fiscally and what's going on with the economy right now. It's kind of scary.
Well, and I would remind the trustees that the memorandum of understanding with the SEA is still there until that third step is restored, that is the priority, and that is the agreement between the board and our teachers and staff in general, that step will be restored as soon as we can and before any other kinds of compensation will be adjusted. So any other comments, trustees? Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Okay, hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion to enter back into the special board meeting as we leave the public hearing portion.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. So we are back now into the special board meeting. Item number 4, communications and correspondence. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's rights to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms which can be obtained from the district's website. And we did have a couple of comments submitted The first one is from Stan Masters, who is a grandparent. His comments: I like this virtual learning. I think the school district did an exceptional job with the virtual learning program and implemented it with surprising speed during a crisis. I also think it should continue to be used in the future for children that are ill or those children that tend to get into trouble and cannot follow the rules. I think it's an excellent tool and we should continue to use it for learning, mainly because it helps schools that are overcrowded and children can continue to learn even during crisis and dangerous times. The second comment is from Trudy Morey, a parent. I am a parent and aunt to children in Sweetwater County School District Number 1. What I am really needing to know how this school district is going to address the fall school year. We have muddled through the fourth quarter of this year with online schooling, and I have not been very impressed. I know this was unexpected and everyone is doing their best, but despite the best efforts made, what happened was not education. It was a process of going through some motions to satisfy bureaucratic requirements. Not much else was accomplished. Should this COVID-19 pandemic and limitations still exist when school resumes or come about again after a month or two, what is the plan? I need to know there is something better planned. I have a daughter who is going into her sophomore year in high school and is college bound. I also have 3 nieces in the school district who are going into their senior, junior, and the first grade years. These children need their educational foundations to be firm. During this last quarter, my daughter has received extremely minimal assignments in her math and English classes. English assignments consisted of journal entries to count as attendance, which were never graded, and 1 final outline. Math assignments were 10 to 20 questions per week, and absolutely nothing assigned for 3 of the 8 weeks. I received multiple communications from my daughter's teachers regarding the lack of participation by a majority of students, one stating there was less than 25% participation in her math class. Some of these communications in all caps, which to me showed there was a huge level of frustration. My daughter's history teacher converted 2 large assignments into extra credit because too few students completed the assignments and the teacher could not fail the entire class. My niece, who just finished kindergarten, was minimally engaged and so frustrated. She was an excellent student and so happy with going to school, but now you mention school and she just cries and gets angry. In her words, what does internet have to do with school? At her level, I definitely agree with her questioning because she isn't learning and does not understand. I would very much like to know if there are committees, training, any thought process going on in regards to online schooling should the pandemic force us into this situation during next year. Despite the best efforts put forth during the end of the school year, this form of schooling is not meeting the mark of effective education. It's one thing to muddle through the fourth quarter of a school year and a whole other to think this is okay for an entire school year. To the administration, teachers, staff, and school board, this may just be a blip in time, which in your overall lifetime will not be significant. It's just bureaucracy to maintain funding. However, please take on the perspective of a sophomore in high school who's trying to build an educational foundation on which to build your life. Determine if you have the ability to further your education into college and beyond to a career to support yourself and the lifestyle you are wishing to have. I really don't want to hear that we hope this is not the situation and there is no plan which will be any better than the current one. Is the mindset one in which we are now in summer vacation mode? Teachers are not on contract hours. We will figure this out a week before school is scheduled to resume. Certainly, I think from the board's perspective, what I would say is we are confident that there are plans being made, and I'm going to ask Superintendent McGovern to build on that.
Sure. I think first and foremost, I think it's unfortunate that our parent feels that way, and I wish it was different that they didn't. However, I can tell you some of the ideas in moving forward for the fall. It is not an easy decision for how things might look. I think first and foremost that what we are dealing with in COVID-19 is a health situation. And so the first thing that we need to look at as a district is from the eyes of safety. So we need to take a look at the national level from the Centers of Disease Control, the state level with the Department of Health, and then on a local level, our local county health officer as well. The second thing before making a decision, and I think you will find most districts across the country that they are keeping an eye out on what their local health data is revealing to them throughout the summer. I wish it was a decision that could be made right now, because we would all agree that we want children back in our schools. We want to hear their voices in our hallways. And the most important thing is we want good teachers to stand in front of them and work alongside them. But I think the second thing to take a look at is to bring children back, which is the ultimate goal, is the procedures that we would need to have in place so that we can ensure their safety. That could include personal protective equipment, temperature checks, social distancing. And then third would be the instructional needs of all the students. If we brought them in, we want them to be able to attend school in what is a normal sense for our students. We want what's best for them, for all kids, whether they're struggling, whether they're reaching above the expectations, but really able to meet all their needs. We know that we've got to be able to be nimble. We need to be light-footed so that however that health data reveals as we move forward, we can adjust accordingly. I am very proud of our school district on the actions that everybody took during that time from every department, from our teachers to transportation to IT, nutrition services, administration. Everyone did a fabulous job. But I think we've got to be able to really look at all options and be ready to go in whatever avenue that we're forced to turn if we are unable to bring students back. In order to do that, I think some of the things we need to look at, most importantly, and I know it was mentioned in the public comment, but that's the social emotional side of our students as well as to the academics. We know that our kids will be out of school for 5 months when we return back. And so we need to make sure that our kids are ready to go and that they do have that positive outlook and they're excited to be back in the classroom. I know our teachers, I was involved with returning the technology at both the secondary and the elementary level. And to visit with the parents, to visit with some of the staff, they miss each other. And that's where we want kids to be, is in our schools, in your school district. But we've got to take a look at the social emotional side. I think the other thing is we need to walk in the footsteps of a student. And what I mean by that, I think we need to consider their day. So what does that look like when they're at the bus stop in the morning and they're riding district transportation to school? What does that look like when they enter school and they line up in front of the building? Breakfast or lunch in the school buildings, their classroom. How is that going to look with guidance from local county health? What about recess? What about our PE and health classes? Any of the other classes, career and technical education? Our nurse's office? Parents and visitors in our schools? Cleanliness and safety standards also need to be considered. It's going to be crucial in order to bring kids back that not only do we have the procedures for keeping things sanitized and disinfected, but also how do we do that on a routine basis so that our kids can attend every day. And then after school activities, how would that look for our students? We want to be able to provide those, but again, in a safe manner. So the question came forward about what are the next steps for the school district on how do we do that? We keep an eye on all of those guidelines that we have in place that we must keep an eye on from a federal, from a national, from a state and a local level. But also within the school district, one of the things that we will be looking into in the next couple of weeks is actually a Smart Start task force, a reentry task force that we could put together. We are waiting on some guidance from the state level, but in that interim time, we will put a group together composed of some teachers, parents, business partners, administrators, other school district staff, and our trustees, and take a look at all of those options so that we can be light-footed and ready to go for whatever those plans may be in the fall. But I do think, Mrs. Jellicoe, before I turn that back over to you, I think it's important to say that our goal is to bring kids back into school. That's where it's the place for them to be. We just want to do that safely and make sure that we can meet all of their needs, and then also for our staff to keep everyone as safe and healthy as possible.
Thank you for that update, Mrs. McGovern. Sure.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mickelson.
I'm sorry. I know this is sort of out of order, but I did want to share, and thank you, Superintendent McGovern. One little point of clarity: anyone who thinks that what the teachers and administrators did to move us through the crisis, to provide crisis education, is the same as what we would be doing for a COVID reintroduction plan is thankfully deeply misinformed. Right? What districts did to address this issue was to provide crisis education. What we're going to do going forward is to provide the best education that we can for our students. And there's a statewide committee that has now met twice that is reviewing multiple states' plans and district plans and an enormous amount of data to make a recommendation to the governor's education committee that will then provide the guidance to the districts for must-haves, should-haves, would be nice-to-haves to guide the development and implementation of those plans. And one of the key areas, I'm on that committee along with some teachers and superintendents, some board members from medium and small districts, and representatives from the governor's office and the public health nursing office. And communication is one of the 4 areas that we're looking at. How do districts communicate all the information to ensure that everyone is safe? They're looking at instruction and curriculum, they're looking at health and wellness, and they're looking at like district level administration. How are all those things supposed to be done? And anybody out there listening, if you have ideas, shoot them to Superintendent McGovern. She can get them to me, because it is a daunting task to try to look and determine what things have to be in place to provide the guidance to the districts. And I'm very grateful to have been included in that. And it's so brand new that I haven't had a chance to share with anyone, and I apologize for that. But I did want to assure anyone listening that this is being tackled with a great deal of time and resources at the state level, not to dictate to local districts, but to ensure that the education that's delivered across our state continues to be some of the best education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mickelson. That will conclude the communications and correspondence portion of the meeting. Item number 5, the budget amendments. Is there a motion to approve to accept the budget amendments for 2019-2020?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Reedy. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the budget amendments for 2019-2020, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Personnel. Approval of personnel recommendations. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Batolo. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. We also, at this time, have an addendum that has personnel items. So I would entertain a motion to approve the addendum.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. A motion passes. Item number 7, curriculum. Approval to declare 398 books titled Ha! Medieval World and Beyond, student bundles as surplus property and to dispose of by the most efficient method in the best interest of the district in accordance with District Policy DN, School Properties Disposal Procedure. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Batolo. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. The motion is to approve to declare the books surplus and dispose of in the most efficient method. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 8, technology. Approval of the successful bids for purchasing equipment for the Central Administration Building boardroom for broadcasting, streaming, and recording video and audio for district meetings. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Batolo. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I have a,
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Batolo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really think this is a great thing. I think we discovered that there are a lot of folks that will be involved in our processes if they can do that from their own couch. So I think it seems like there's been hundreds of people involved at times. I think I heard him say 350 one time. So I think this is a really good thing. So thank you for putting that together.
Further discussion? I have a couple of questions. I didn't see in the documents the source of the funding for this equipment. There's a
That will sorry. It will come out of the capital project fund.
capital
we had-
projects.
Scott and I worked together with Superintendent McGovern to make sure we had money set aside for this year to do something with the border.
Yeah, the COVID or the capital projects.
Okay, so it's capital projects or the COVID money, either one, huh? Whichever we can,
If appropriate.
if appropriate, okay,
Permitted by CARES
okay.
money.
And secondly, when do you think the equipment will be available for use?
It's our goal to at least have something functional, if not all of the equipment, by the second board meeting in June. Of course, we're dependent on shipping and on people getting the items to us. And with going with a few different companies, I'm not exactly sure how that will look. But the goal is to be able to have something that we could broadcast our second June board meeting from the boardroom.
Okay, and that would, I'm told that there may be a possibility, some stuff may be on back order, so that is a question mark. That's a hope rather than a for sure. Would that be accurate?
That is 100% accurate.
Okay.
Definitely hopeful thinking, optimistic thinking.
Okay, any further discussion? I would agree with Mr. Batolo. I think, we were kind of forced because of the circumstances into this streaming, but the participation rate that we have seen, 400, even 500 people at times, we can't even fit that number of people in the boardroom. So I think it will be nice to be able to get to where we can have actual meetings, but at the same time, for convenience of those people who want to check in this way, I think it's a very transparent way of keeping our constituents informed and continue to streaming. So I think this will be very good use of funds wherever we get them. So the motion is to approve for the purchasing equipment of the audio and visual recording equipment. There is a motion and a second. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, opposed, nay. Okay, the motion passes. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mickelson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes. We are adjourned.